word. I couldn't. Anyway, it's Little Mix. Yeah, from X Factor. You know the group of girls a few years ago. Yeah, Little Mix from X Factor. It was the Sport Relief song of 2014, and I found it this morning. And went, oh, I've got to play that.
It's a really good version.
Sadly, it is, isn't it? It's actually sadly quite good. Oh, good afternoon. Welcome to. Yes. No, I don't believe it. Oh. Sorry, we've got 50 seconds yet. I don't believe it. I'm just interrupting. Somebody guessed it, and I'm never going to live it down because she likes to be right all the time. Well done, Karen. Be my wife. Huh? I'm live, look. Terry! There we go. As my wife managed to tweet and tell us, that was Little Mix and the Comic Relief song. No, got it wrong. Sport Relief song of 2014. So I'm going to live that down when we go home now. I might figure it out. I'm tempted to hunt out the cameo version and play the cameo version.
God, so it's a classic.
It is, isn't it? Did you ever think when you were watching that video back in 19 that you would be saying, it's a classic?
I didn't.
might shed some light as to why you haven't got a job at the moment. You know, interestingly, on the job hunting front, I was at a meeting last night, which is actually, I'll name it, I don't mind. It's with Milton Keynes Academy, and we are, there's a panel there working very hard to establish employability skills and to come up with some form of charter so that the people in Milton Keynes know that when they get faced with a student with one of these awards, that not only are they educated to a good level, but they've also got the aptitude as well. Yes, please, or gun. Okay, let's see what I can find. Yeah, so we were working on that, and one of the things we were saying last night is that there's a growing trend, I suppose, for computer assessments before you even get to the interview. So your CV comes in, that's dealt with. Yes. Then the next thing you know, you're trying to sit a basic numeracy and literacy test. Anyway, the guy that I was speaking to, the company that was involved, they've been doing this for a number of years, very successfully, and it's made quite a difference. They've now introduced a time element to it, which wasn't there before. So now you've got time limits to answer the questions. 21 people in the last 3 weeks have sat this. One person's got through.
Wow.
I don't know if that's showing the state of the people coming for the interviews, or whether they've benchmarked the test too high. It's a hard one, isn't it? Because you invest a lot of time and effort putting these things in place to say this is the right level that we should be looking at, and then suddenly nobody passes it.
Yeah,
again, if that's the level you need on the coalface, if you like, then that's the level you need on the coalface.
Don't you think they should do a sample though of a lower rate and just to see what results they get from that?
I'm knowing the company the way I do that is behind it. I'm sure they have. It's been well and truly researched.
It is something I think that's very much a growing aspect of the employment market. In terms of many of the roles that I've applied for, I've actually been asked to complete these sorts of tests. I think the missing element for me is how that information is used and fed back to you. Because whether you're successful or unsuccessful, I think it's incredibly important to have some closure on that, so that will help you with your future applications, and that's the missing piece for me. So how are these things used as part of firstly as part of the employment process? Secondly, what kind of feedback are employers providing based on the results of those to help their candidates in future? And thirdly, how relevant are some of these tests to the actual type of role that you'll be employing to conduct? And I think if it's very clear the connection between the two, then that's absolutely fine. What I do find is that some organisations are using these without necessarily understanding the purpose and the desired outcome for them.
Absolutely, and of course there's the whole DISC assessment and the various other world of, there's hundreds of them in reality.
Because they actually don't show you the results that they come up with, do they?
No, well, the interesting thing is many organisations now are actually asking you to complete these online.
Right.
And as David mentions, they're time-based, so you have to complete these within, say, 15 minutes. It does put you under a lot of pressure, particularly some of the tests that actually ask you to understand patterns or trends within a series of numbers or patterns or shapes, and then try and predict them which will be the next one. Because you quite literally, if you're asked to complete 20 or 30 of these within a 15-minute period, that's literally one every 30 seconds. And that's hard.
Yeah.
The thing I was asking, and we haven't got the answers yet, but the companies agreed to see if they can fit this question into interviews, is how many of those people that do well on these time-based questions turn out to be online gamers, to play these massive multi-online games? Because I've been writing a paper something about this for years now, and I think the results could be interesting. I really do. There's a generation out there that I'll sum it up very quickly. I'm sure I've spoken about it before, but it's basically my youngest, who's 20-something, 25, walking through Sainsbury's one day, first Greece crisis, long, 7 or 8 years ago, something like that must be. And he kind of stopped me. He said to me, "Well, what do you think's going to happen? Are Greece going to pull out of the euro?" Strange look at child going, "No, you anything about this?" And the question, the conversation went on, and effectively, he was doing something within this game that gave them something that they could sell. And traditionally, it sells. There's two marketplaces. One was in the dollar. One was in the euro. Traditionally, he would get a better price for things if he placed them on the market in the euro. However, if the euro was going to be unstable, he was then going to go, actually, I'll take the knock on the potential profit margin and I'll get the guaranteed sale and I'll sell it. And I stood there in the middle of Sainsbury's looking at him thinking, I'm just talking global economics with somebody who, quite frankly, I thought just sat and played games. And then the conversation led on, various other things led on. Now, you've been a project manager in HR. Terry, you've been a project... If a client came to you with this brief, Friday night, 4-hour commitment, and your job as a project manager is you need to get 20-something people, let's say 25 people, from 14 countries, all with unique skill sets, to make a 4-hour commitment to carry out a project on a Friday night with all the language barriers and time zone issues you've got, would you take that project on?
It's a really interesting question, I think, in terms of understanding what the scope of the project was. I need to look very closely at that. Also, I think you're quite right. Time zone differences are critical, understanding where people are in terms of language, capability, skill sets, and whether or not you actually have a really good talent management framework, so you understand where those skills exist within the business. That's critical, because if you don't have that, you're going to fail.
That's how our generation looks at it, yeah? The online gaming community do that every week.
Yes.
They have a raid, which is a 4-hour time commitment, so it's 4-hour time commitment, multi-skills, because you need the wizards and the healers and the orcs and the... Boy, I don't know. I'm trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about. I haven't got a clue. But effectively, you need all these skill sets. So you need the skill sets, you need the right amount of people, you need the commitment, and you've got all those time barriers and all those language barriers, and they do it every night. And it's normal. So maybe I'm thinking when they come to do these time-related challenges, I'm thinking that they're much better prepared than we are.
Different mindset.
To go, that's the decision, I'm going with it. Whereas we kind of probably more risk averse, I suppose, and we try and make sure we know what we're talking about.
I think it's also about the context in which you're delivering these things. I mean, if it's a major project for your organisation, you've obviously got a boss, you've got different stakeholders, whereas maybe in the online gaming world, it's a different environment, but for the people that are engaged in that, it's still just as important.
It's a real world, isn't it? You know,
Absolutely.
you've got commitments, you've got projects, you've got things that you can sell. That's no more or less real than where we live, and we will. I've promised myself I'm going to do a whole show dedicated to this, and I will do it at some point.
Well, they get paid for it. A lot of
Yeah, some of them do.
Gamers out there.
Yeah, and let's not forget, you know, there are people that. Well, my eldest son has met his fiancée through the world of online gaming. She's not. No, she's tiny. She's tiny. No, she's a real person. He went off down to Bristol to meet her just on a whim. And we have to respect that world. And I think us as employers, and definitely that whole generation, we need to accept the fact that these are real skills, and we need to look at them in a different way. Because I suppose if you were looking to employ somebody and you saw on their CV, I play online games, I know I would just gloss over them. However, if you saw on their CV, I run projects from 4 time zones and I'm going to take notice of them.
Exactly.
Same thing.
Yes.
It's all about how you dress it up. So you're finding, because bearing in mind, you've been in the workplace for a number of years,
Yes.
Working for companies like BP and not BP,
BT.
yes. The other lot, yes, and a lot of it's proper companies, aren't they? They're big blue chip companies that you've worked for,
Organisations, yes.
and suddenly you're scumbling around in the non-working world. How did it? I'm kind of interested in kind of knowing, did that knock your confidence? How did it make you feel?
It's one of those things that is quite literally life-changing. You suddenly have a level of income, you have a lifestyle, you have almost the perfect world.
Yep.
That's no longer there. You have that enormous impact not only on your day-to-day lifestyle, but also those occasions where you're so used to jumping from a webinar straight onto a conference call. You're managing a project that might involve multiple people from different countries. All of a sudden the phone's not ringing anymore, and you no longer have that structure to your day. I think the community that you're used to working with, you come into contact with so many people during the course of the day. It's very easy to become very isolated, and that absolutely knocks your confidence, because you've gone from what was formerly a very successful world into almost everyone else's world continues and lives continue as normal.
Yes.
And yours has changed beyond measure. And understanding and supporting somebody going through that transition is extremely difficult. And I'm very lucky to have a very supportive family and people around me. But I think for many people it's very easy to become isolated, and the more we call it the scattergun approach when you're applying for lots of jobs online, and it almost becomes a survival job nowadays for many people, because they quite literally still have those bills to pay. And that can actually, in some ways, it's interesting, there were some statistics from the USA Today published earlier this week that talked about, do you take a survival job, and if so, is that going to affect your future employability chances? If you've been a middle manager, for example, in the past, so are employers necessarily going to think, well, he or she has still got those skills? Or do you find that that's going to affect, that quite literally is going to help you get your next role? Because you're still in employment, and it's much easier to get another job if you're still in employment than not.
I've many years ago now, I took a job that was going backwards down the ladder, if you like. So I've been a branch manager, I've been an area manager, I've been sales, I've gone through all that lot, and I went into sales, and it wasn't really my thing. And I went into sales for a national company, and I didn't enjoy it, so I left. And I took an engineer's job. It was there, they were looking, and I rang them up, said, I'll come and work for an engineer. And my boss at the time said, well, how are you going to feel taking that step? Oh no, I'll be absolutely fine. My feeling of self-worth vanished. Don't get me wrong, I loved the job. It was easy. had long hours in it, but that's the nature of the beast, you know. But it was relatively easy. I was very secure in my job, well respected within the company, and I was there for 4 years. And I was a zombie for 4 years. I pitched up. I had very little. I still have pride in my jobs, and I still did the best job I could, and I stand by that. I have done that in every, you know, I'm here volunteering on the radio station, and I do try and make this the best show that I can do it, and it will get better. Won't it, Terry?
Absolutely.
But I ended up, yeah, one day I ended up stuck there for 4 years, which was my own choice. But it was so easy, I didn't want to leave. It was comfortable. But again, every day it was just nibbling away. One thing I am intrigued, and it's slightly, well, it's not controversial, is it? How do you find the job centre? Because of course you have to go there, don't you? Hasn't that changed?
That is probably the hardest thing of all. The support for middle and senior managers is non-existent.
No.
Quite literally isn't. For those people that may be listening from that may have similar experience in the job centre, it quite literally, unfortunately, is almost a form-filling exercise. It's something you have to go through, but the quality of advice, support,
It's not good, is it?
It's just not there.
And they've rebranded obviously the Job Centre Plus. Plus.
When I went there a few years ago now, but they said to me that I will never find you a job.
That's been my experience as well.
Just filled full.
Yeah.
And that's soul destroying.
It is soul destroying, you know, because you work hard in life to build yourself up to something what you're proud of, you know, and all of a sudden you're a nobody again.
I mean, I felt this sense of shame. I really did, because, you know, being unemployed currently, it's tremendously hard.
Interesting when we are also in a world now, as we dive underneath the mic, where sadly we are dealing with second and third generation unemployed, and we are hearing on the documentaries and on the television and all the rest of it, you know, people are saying, oh well, we're lucky we live in a country where we can choose to not work, and yet you're here saying actually you felt terrible going in there and signing on, but you must have been around people that maybe didn't. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, I think it is. I think in any sector of society you've always got individuals that take different approaches depending on where they are in terms of their own lifestyles and ambitions.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a hardcore of individuals that it may be, and I hate saying it, but it may be a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
For some, for others, it may be something that it comes as a tremendous shock. And
It did to me when I had to sign on.
Yeah, and I fall into that category as well, Dave. I think for me there was a sense of shame, a sense that I'd let down my family, a sense that those people that previously looked up to me, I felt differently about myself in terms of my own self-worth, my self-esteem. And the more applications you submit and you don't get those callbacks, the more it almost becomes
I think at some point I started to feel. I mean, I've been running my own consultancy now for quite some time, and I'm glad I do. But I started to feel like maybe the last job I'd had, was I a fraud? Did I really deserve it? Because there can't be another one like it. So maybe actually I wasn't good at the last job that I thought I'd been good at, and maybe I was being kept for some other reason, or they didn't know what they were looking for. And you do, don't you? You start challenging your every belief, and you don't know where to go. And like you say, the support is terrible, but we're lucky in Milton Keynes. You mentioned them already. Do you want to give them another plug?
I do.
Melvin and these boys.
MKEA are exceptional, and for those of you that are not familiar with it, it's Milton Keynes Executives Action, and it's run by a management team. And I just want to take a moment just to pay tribute to the work and dedication that the guys perform. They have quite literally been, I described it as an oasis for me in terms of restoring or helping to restore my sense of self-worth, my self-belief, and also my self-confidence. Marvin in particular has been a truly inspirational in terms of how he leads and inspires others. They were formed some 4 years ago, and in that time they have helped almost 400 people in the Milton Keynes area.
And they're a complete voluntary organisation.
Absolutely voluntary. They receive some funding from the DWP, but it doesn't go anywhere near to covering all the full
Wouldn't
costs.
it be really nice if we could find a way in the world where the percentage of money that goes to, let's say, Job Centre Plus,
Yes.
that is being sent there, let's be real, to support you, well, it's failing, it's not supporting you, wouldn't it be wonderful if those funds could go to the place that is supporting you,
Yes.
to somewhere like MK?
Very much so.
Do you remember the days of the Job Centre where you'd go in and there were all the boards and the little cards, and you'd go through and you'd take the card down, or you'd scribble down the details that you wanted, you'd go up to the desk, and then they would pick up the phone there and then, wouldn't they? And they'd ring the company and say, actually, let's get your interview booked, anything you need to know, anything I need to tell the candidate, and it was actually really, it still wasn't a pleasant experience, but let's face it, it shouldn't be, should it?
No, no. I mean, for me, I've literally, up until the current period, I'd had 3 weeks out of work in a 40-year career. And I was immensely proud of that record, immensely proud.
And how long's it been now?
It's been end of March, beginning of April. So in that time, I have submitted in excess of 120 applications.
Yeah.
Had probably around 13 or 14 interviews. Some of which have gone very well. In fact, I actually teach interview skills, so for me...
They should go well.
They absolutely should.
You've got no excuse there.
And interestingly, I've taught in excess of 70 managers across Europe how to actually interview using a competency-based framework. So I believe I performed very well for different reasons. Some of those interviews didn't work out as well as I would have hoped.
Yeah.
Others, I took the decision that some of the organisations that I'd interviewed for, some of those roles were later withdrawn, which comes back to the earlier point you were making about requisitions can be cancelled almost at a moment's notice. So you can get a good way down the interview process and then find all of a sudden it's either gone to an internal candidate or that role has just been pulled due to financial reasons, headcount reasons, whatever that might be. And that's the most frustrating of all. And I think if you have to deal with a situation like that because you put your heart and soul into preparing for that interview, you do meticulous research, you anticipate all of the kind of questions you're going to be asked. And again, it's researching the company's products, their markets, market share, numbers of employees, etc., etc. And when you put in that amount of preparation and then you get so far down the process and then find that it's either gone to another candidate, but you don't receive any quality feedback at the end of that process to help you understand and process why you weren't selected for that role. That's the disconnect.
It's scary, isn't it?
And that's the part where you think, well, actually, I mean, some good examples where you're a great match for the role, you've got all the skills and experience, but for reasons unbeknown to myself, it's gone to another candidate.
Yeah.
And you think, well, actually, if I was such a great fit, how come I'm not being cited?
I think somewhere along the line, someone's not being straight with me,
And that's the hardest bit, I think, to deal with. And and on the other hand, you've got some exceptional sort of recruiters and employers that do provide quality feedback, and I pay tribute to those because I've been at the other end. I've done the HR business part of it, where I've received literally 150 applications for one job.
Yeah.
So I totally understand, the sort of the things that they're up against as well. But I do think there is massive room for employment in terms of the candidate experience.
There has to be, isn't there? Tell you what, we will have a think about that. I think when we come back, we'll talk about. Let's try and give a couple of hints and tips to those following through, shall we? So let's have a listen to this, and we're back in a few minutes.
I'll tell you what, this is something you can make a whole show about.
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely. It's such a huge, and it does. You end up feeling. Have you started watching Jeremy Cole yet?
Almost.
Oh,
You, I can think back to many years ago. I came in and I was only in that job for 3 years. I wanted to make a then it got rid of me. And they give it to a bloke who hasn't got a clue about it.
don't you think?
It was a mate of the MD's son.
You get that, and you also get that the job has changed. So actually they've interviewed for something that the strategic focus of the company has shifted. So you end up looking at it and going, that's rubbish. But you don't actually know what that guy's there to do. You know.
Well, that great when he said to me, we have to keep it together for years. It goes over a year and we have to keep it.
Now all that has changed, thankfully.
And I thought myself,
Here's a question, Terry, see if you know this now, and relevant for you as well. When do you think the contract starts? So when are you under contract to a company? So you've gone for the interview.
I would have thought when you start, but obviously not.
No, it's changed.
When you go and interview.
When you get the letter, when you get the offer letter, and they are under contract to you, and you are under contract to them, because it's a promise of employment, and a promise is now considered to be the same as being paid. So actually, you're under contract. Back to those. It is how it should be. You know, and it's a tough world out there, and it's a different world out there.
I'm not saying it's great. You know, I'd like yourself, I've been on both sides. You know, you can see the problems that a company has from someone's stupidity. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was at
But where?
the manager in Leeds sacked someone, one of the managers. So the manager in the sales said, I've got another manager. So I didn't notice it, and then they decided to invest another.
15 seconds, guys.
So, disappearing is for taking the money out.
Natasha's Noise, Fridays at 6 on Seclo Sound. The only place to get the latest YouTube news and gossip. Tune in for an hour of chat and euphony that you won't want to miss. So remember, Natasha's Noise here on
10
Seclo
seconds.
Sound, Fridays at 6.
She still scares me. Our paths have never yet crossed. We keep missing each other. There's something about her promo that makes me go, oh, I've got to tune in. So, welcome back. This is Seclo Sounds. I am David Stimson, and you are listening to Transition. Good afternoon, Miss Wildman. She's just joined us on Periscope as well. Look at that. Yeah. We kind of hinted at before, didn't we? The hour is rapidly galloping away from us, which I think is a good thing. And as we discussed earlier, and those on Periscope will have heard that, you know, we could make this easily 2 or 3 shows. You know, it's a minefield. One thing before I do forget, would you like to? You are a man for hire.
I am.
Very, very quickly, sort of, 30 seconds. Let's have your CV and how we get hold of you. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. So, in terms of contacting me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. The name is Ken Summerfield. You'll see that I'm a certified facilitator, many years' experience within HR and within learning and development as well. 25-year plus career within BT, so lots of current skills, highly transferable skills. One of the things I specialise in, as I indicated, I conduct competency-based interview training, as well as preparing and succeeding at interview training on behalf of MKEA. And I recently ran a very successful session over at Notting King's College for the group. And it was great. I received 8 recommendations immediately after that session from participants. So I think that was really great.
Is LinkedIn the best place to go for you?
LinkedIn is a really good place to find me. You can also find me on Twitter. So #Ken.Summerfield.
Fantastic.
You'll find me on there. Email ken.summerfield@hotmail.co.uk. And again, I can also give out my mobile number towards the end of the broadcast if anyone wants to contact.
Fantastic. Likewise, if you are looking for that HR role, or you just want to have a chat, and you like what you've heard, you can always email me here at the station, david@seclosounds.org. Now, one of the things I do, and I think it's a nice wrap up for where we are, I work a lot with schools, with Young Enterprise, with Worktree. I also am a STEM ambassador. I'm a huge believer in the education system, which is ironic because I really didn't like school. I didn't like education. I didn't like being educated. I was smart enough to do well. I didn't do well because it didn't work for me. So one of the things I talk to the students about, and I think this is hugely relevant, I'm sure you've both got something to chip in here. We all know that you iron your shirt, you polish your shoes, you put on your suit, well, we live in the world of social media. Clean your social media as well, because if I'm interested, the first thing I'm going to do is giggle you. And I think it's right. We've discussed this before. It costs something like £20,000 to employ somebody, and that's the cost to the company. And they've got to make that back before they get anywhere with you, So you're talking, you've got to be there for 12 months before there's any return on investment. Now, if I was looking for somebody to work on a Friday and a Saturday night, that was a key part of the job. And I found the person, brilliant candidate, absolutely interviewed perfectly, all the right skills. And I then looked on their Facebook page and found actually they work in a nightclub as a DJ on a Friday and Saturday night. They haven't told me this, but immediately they are, no fault of their own, they are not the right person for the job. And I think it's kind of right. If you're making a 20 grand investment, old world, half an hour interview at best. New world, go and have a look at your Facebook page and I see your life. I mean, how have you found that?
It's interesting, I think, particularly as a lot of people may or may not be aware that Google changed their algorithm on the 24th of August, which means that everything that you tweet is also shared on Google.
Yes.
So people that think, okay, I've got to have a great LinkedIn profile because that's the professional side, but the stuff I tweet is much more individual. It's more about kind of my personal interests. It's discoverable by employers. So again, anyone that hasn't or wasn't aware of that previously, I would certainly highly recommend that you look at your social media profile and think about what employers can potentially discover.
We've had the conversation here as well. I don't think it was today. Doesn't matter. It's one of those key things. This is exactly the same thing. It's a media outlet. Once I talk into this big thing here, it's there.
Yes.
And it ain't coming away. And I don't know who's going to pick it up, who's going to go, I'll take a snippet of that, we'll use that will come up in the future. You have to be, I think the golden rule when we've had all of our social media shows is don't offend people and don't say something that you don't mean. Get your facts right, do the research. Yes, you can have your own opinion, and actually we value people with opinions. But make sure you know what you're talking about and get it right, and do not go out to offend people, because people remember that, don't they?
And it will come back to bite you.
Yeah, more so now than ever before. And again, we had the conversation about social media. I don't know what your views are on this, but making this more honest. Because, for example, we are sitting here now on Periscope. Okay, there we are. Hi guys. There's about 24 people tuned in watching a radio show, which is a bit bizarre, but that is the way it is. Now,
Well, they're only watching you.
they are running. What the hell? Do you want to? Let's have Terry on for a bit, shall we? There we go. There's Terry.
I can't see Terry.
You will do in a
I'm
minute.
still seeing you.
But you don't know. You say to your boss, "Well, I'm sick," and you go to, I don't know, let's say Alton Towers today. There's 2,000 people wandering around with cameras, posting you on Instagram, posting you all over the show. There's no point saying to your boss you're sick and then appearing on someone's Facebook page going, "Whee!" as you get down a roller coaster. It doesn't. We are more innocent than we used to, or more honest than we used to be. So, have you found social media as a useful tool for finding work, finding those answers that maybe aren't there?
I have. What I've used social media for, I've got in excess of 2,000 followers and first-degree connections on LinkedIn.
Right.
So that's a network that I've cultivated very closely. And that includes lots of people, both within my profession, but more broadly across the globe, quite literally.
We are in a global village, aren't we?
Many industries that what I do, I don't simply send a standard connection invitation to somebody, which is the default LinkedIn connection. I always personalise it and help the individual to understand why I feel it's valuable for us to connect.
I only connect with people that I've met.
Yes.
There might have been a very fleeting meet, but there was something there that was a connection, and then I will follow it up. I must admit to being terrible, as you know, because I did connect with you. I don't personalise, and there's a reason for this. 9 times out of 10, I'm on the phone using the app.
Yeah.
You don't get the option to. You just hit the connect button and it does it.
That's something they need to work on.
It is, yeah. So I feel you should be able to go and put like a person, we met at such and such, but that's me being lazy. And thankfully he did connect with me. Otherwise, I'd be feeling a bit daft at this point. But so there's that. Do you think Twitter and Instagram and these
Twitter
places
is
are
interesting. I saw some statistics just before coming on the show that showed that 53% of employers are now using Twitter as a primary employment method. Facebook has also increased substantially as a recruitment method. So again, comes back to what we were talking about a moment ago about ensuring your profile is the kind of thing that you'd be comfortable with an employer seeing.
I'll be honest there with you. It's not very often in the world of social media that somebody wanders in here with a stat that I haven't heard. I haven't seen that one.
Well,
I totally believe it.
Yes.
I've got one you haven't heard of.
Oh dear. Go.
Wow app.
Yeah.
It's quite new, but it's brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like Skype on roller skates.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, the world is changing, isn't it? We are used to exchanging information at 140 characters at a time.
Yeah, quite. And for me, it's about how you make that connection, but more importantly, how you continue with that relationship.
Yes.
Because if you build that connection initially, if you don't follow up on that, then that connection
It's dead,
really,
isn't it?
the relationship doesn't exist. It's simply a connection rather than a meaningful relationship. And for me, if you're going to have a really good network, it's important that you add value, you give lots more than you actually ask for.
Yes.
Because that way you're not only reciprocating potential employment opportunities, it's also...
Well, you don't know where that person's going to go next.
Of course, it's referral opportunities if you're going to look at an employer, and rather than simply submitting the CV online, you have got another route into that organisation.
Yeah.
Because you can look at your connections on LinkedIn or on Twitter and contact that person, ask about what it's like to work in that organisation, details of the hiring manager, any further information about the job
Any other
might not be available.
departments.
Exactly. So, and again, many employers have employee referral schemes, which of course are much more cost effective for them.
Yes.
Rather than pay an agency fee. And again, the statistics show that 43% of employers or employees stay longer if they've been referred to an organisation rather than if they've applied directly.
There's a personal connection, isn't there? At that point, it's kind of... The chair in the studio is broken, by the way, so yes, I am sinking. Hi, everybody on Periscope, I disappear. It's people buy from people still. We still like to feel warm and cosy and loved, and this is a little family. One thing I will say before we run out of time is, as with all my guests here, you've come on the show once, you are welcome back anytime. You don't necessarily need to tell me, you can just turn up. We're also doing something with Worktree that's in the pipeline at the moment with the transition team, where we will be offering basically this to members of Worktree's organisation. So they come and do some time with Worktree and a little bit of a payoff, and then Young Enterprise as well, actually, any volunteers if you want to drop me a line. But the Worktree thing is we will, once a week, well, I think I'm looking about once a month, we'll have a member of Worktree come on and just say, how they're finding the workplace, how you feel. Do you find, very, very quickly, actually, I'm not going to do that, we're going to have to save it for another show, I'm really sorry, we've run out of time. I'm David Stimson, this has been Transition. You are listening to St. Close Sounds, community radio for Milton Keynes, and I think we've had a good show. I will see you all next week, and actually I couldn't go without it, could I? Had to play it. I mean, you can't not play it.
You can't.
Ah! There's a message from my wife there that says the Institute of Chartered Accountants pay £500 for employee referrals.
Wow.
That's how seriously they don't take it.
That's exactly the kind of thing.
Yeah. I feel for you, I really do. It's a